In the early 1950s, the Central Intelligence Agency sought to expand its research on mind manipulation techniques, convinced that the USSR or other rival powers were already engaging in similar experiments. In this climate of distrust and scientific competition, the MK-Ultra program took shape and received significant funding from 1953 onwards to explore different avenues: the use of psychotropic drugs, hypnosis techniques, sensory deprivation methods, and several other approaches aimed at gaining control of an individual without their knowledge. CIA officials wanted to know if substances like LSD could lead individuals to disclose confidential information, obey more easily, or lose their bearings. While MK-Ultra explored a wide range of scenarios in laboratories or secret units, a unique sub-project was set in motion, the one called Midnight Climax. It aimed to test the effects of these drugs in real-world conditions, outside the typical confines of laboratories and without obtaining the consent of the targeted individuals. The creators of Midnight Climax believed that taking LSD in an atmosphere of relaxation or sexual pleasure could reveal information impossible to obtain otherwise. They also wanted to measure how this combination could facilitate manipulation or encourage unmentionable confidences. In the shadows, a clandestine setup was put in place, associating secret locations, personnel recruited at the edge of legality, and financial resources hidden within MK-Ultra's accounts. This initiative first emerged from the mind of Sidney Gottlieb, chief chemist of the CIA's Office of Technical Service. Gottlieb was already a central figure in the MK-Ultra world. He supervised the development of chemical compounds, managed LSD stocks, and attempted to determine the doses likely to create mental confusion in unsuspecting targets. At the head of his department, he also inherited the work started in the BLUEBIRD and ARTICHOKE projects, two previous secret programs focused on interrogation methods, the search for a truth serum, and the use of various barbiturates to get prisoners of war to talk. Continuing these experiments, Gottlieb believed that everyday life conditions, such as the setting of an intimate encounter, offered an ideal ground to exacerbate psychological vulnerability. He successfully convinced his superiors of the importance of conducting in vivo trials, outside traditional laboratories, to observe what happens when ordinary people consume psychoactive drugs without their knowledge during a boozy evening or a romantic date. Internal memos, kept for a time in the CIA archives, clearly displayed these ambitions: to study the effect of LSD and other substances on unprepared individuals, placing them in a context of pleasure or relaxation to see if the drug combined with sexuality could unlock more secrets. The plans for Midnight Climax also mention the idea of checking if, under the combined effect of these two factors, an individual could be pushed to accept criminal suggestions, confess compromising elements, or carry out orders they would normally refuse. To operate such a sensitive setup on American soil, the CIA knew it needed strong cover and logistical support removed from its official structures. This is where the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, the FBN, came into play, an agency tasked with fighting drug trafficking. The CIA used the expertise of some FBN agents to approach targets, negotiate with shady intermediaries, and manage the practical aspects of the operation. In theory, the FBN's role was to combat the sale of illicit substances in the United States, but in practice, it became the operational arm of the CIA in setting up real-life laboratories. The intelligence agency delegated the daily management of the locations, recruitment of individuals willing to administer LSD, and observation of the subjects. Officially, these FBN agents continued their anti-drug mission and retained a legitimate status in the eyes of the law. In practice, they devoted much of their time to organizing unauthorized operations, justified by the alleged need to protect national security. George Hunter White, also known by the pseudonym Morgan Hall, stood out as the key figure of this setup on the ground. Federal Bureau of Narcotics agent accustomed to infiltrating criminal circles, he knows how to recruit and manipulate informants, make contacts with pimps or traffickers, and manage undercover operations. In the eyes of CIA officials, he appears to be the ideal man to set up secret apartments, install surveillance equipment, and surround himself with accomplices capable of making unsuspecting visitors consume varied doses of LSD. White thus directly controls all the logistics. He selects the prostitutes likely to attract the targeted victims, explains to them how to pour the drug into drinks, organizes the decoration of the premises to make them look like simple private lounges, and supervises the transmission of collected data to Sidney Gottlieb and his team. Officially, George Hunter White continues his fieldwork for the FBN, but behind the scenes, he transforms these discrete places into illegal experimental zones. The network of safe houses, in other words, secure apartments, first unfolds in California, in San Francisco. The CIA and the FBN rent, under false identities, several spaces in the city, including one located at 225 Chestnut Street on Telegraph Hill, an elevated neighborhood with a clear view and relatively quiet buildings. The operations also extend to Mill Valley, in Marin County, a few miles north of San Francisco, still in California. Subsequently, the experiment extends to New York, to check if the same system works in a megacity on the East Coast. There, subleases are arranged through shell companies, sometimes under the guise of fictitious surveillance or security consulting activities. Each time, they are anonymous houses or apartments, often residential buildings that do not arouse particular suspicion. The concept of a safe house is not limited to an empty apartment. Inside, there is comfortable furniture, a well-stocked bar with various liquors, a bed or sofa allowing for trysts, and a deliberately erotic decoration, designed to evoke a place of pleasure or a semi-clandestine brothel. The FBN and the CIA are keen for the atmosphere to appear libertine, but without excessive noise, to prevent attracting the attention of neighbors. Meanwhile, White's team ensures the installation of a whole recording and observation system. One-way mirrors remain a fundamental element of this setup, as they allow agents stationed on the other side to see and hear everything happening in the room. In some cases, microphones are embedded in walls or lamps, connected to hidden amplifiers, to clearly capture dialogues. Conversations, physical reactions, and statements from drugged subjects are noted or recorded on magnetic tape, then transmitted in coded reports intended for CIA scientists. The budgets necessary for these installations never clearly appear in the official government accounts. To ensure opacity, money transits through foundations presenting themselves as philanthropic, or through completely fabricated research contracts. Internal CIA documents, partially published decades later, indicate the creation of a series of fictitious companies that sign the rental leases and handle purchasing the equipment. These are financial setups designed to muddy the waters, so effective that even some divisions of the CIA are unaware of the exact existence of these apartments scattered along the West Coast and in New York. This whole organization operates permanently in secrecy. Out of the official view, officials strive to justify the operation in the name of national security, arguing that it is necessary to fully understand the mechanisms of human submission under the influence of drugs. Nevertheless, the method remains highly questionable. Administering a powerful psychotropic like LSD to unsuspecting individuals far exceeds the bounds of an ethical scientific protocol, especially since the targets do not sign any agreement. Despite this, in the tense context of the Cold War, higher authorities within the CIA turn a blind eye, convinced that this information could prove vital to preparing a defense against the Soviet enemy. Program leaders believe it is better to conduct these operations discreetly on American soil than to be outpaced by foreign laboratories. The memos detailing the objectives emphasize the evaluation of disinhibition under the cross effect of a chemical tranquilizer and an erotic environment. The goal is to determine how long it takes for LSD to unsettle the natural reserve of a human being, and whether the drugged person can be induced to incriminate others, disclose secrets, or even carry out an illegal order. Sidney Gottlieb receives regular reports on the progress of these tests, sometimes directly, sometimes through a complex transmission chain. In his contacts with George Hunter White, he is particularly interested in the question of dosage. He wants to know the minimal dose likely to trigger unusual behavior or spontaneous confessions from an individual, but he also seeks to avoid overdoses that might attract the attention of local authorities. However, there is no serious medical supervision, and results remain very uneven. Internal notes report individuals reacting strongly to small amounts, agitating or breaking objects, while others seem less sensitive and merely utter incoherent statements. In the locations chosen by White, the drug is generally mixed with alcohol, as a subject who is already slightly drunk will not notice the distinctive taste of LSD, nor its gradual appearance in their drink. For their part, the prostitutes participating in the operation are assured that they will not be bothered by the local police due to their activities. White uses his influence with the FBN to calm any potential investigations, or to cover for the women assisting him in exchange for their silent collaboration. They are instructed on how to administer the LSD, then quickly leave the room once the drug is ingested, or stay to encourage intimate conversation. Meanwhile, George Hunter White and other observers hide behind mirrors, listening and noting the turn of the conversation, the verbal ease, the degree of trust shown by the drugged victim. The apartments are arranged so that everything seems as natural as possible to the unwitting participant. The view of San Francisco, or the streets of New York, gives an illusion of mundane daily life, while the targeted person is unaware that they are at the center of a secret experiment funded by the CIA. As this network of safe houses expands, the CIA hierarchy ensures that barriers are maintained between the different segments of the MK Ultra program. Everything is compartmentalized. Some agents merely supply the materials, others handle recruitment, and few possess a comprehensive view of what is actually happening in San Francisco, Mill Valley, or New York. The few centralized reports pass through heavily coded channels, and neutral terms often replace the explicit naming of a location. Internal documents refer to experimental sites, or testing platforms, to mask the true nature of these clandestine brothels. Funds arrive through fictitious research contracts, often awarded to supposed universities or private laboratories that, in reality, conduct no formal studies. Those invested with decision-making power consider this web of concealment necessary to avoid not only media curiosity, but also any congressional or local police investigation that could expose this campaign of illegal tests. It is 1963, and the CIA's Inspector General, John Ehrman, has just submitted an internal report that creates shock among the officers still discreetly pursuing the project, codenamed Midnight Climax. He strongly condemns the clandestine administration of drugs to unsuspecting individuals and openly questions the legality and ethics of the entire operation. The conclusions of this report are causing increasingly serious concerns within the CIA, because the inspector notes that the practice of drugging subjects without their knowledge in a spacious and playful environment, like an apartment resembling a brothel, no longer has a place in an organization that is beginning to fear scandals and potential legal consequences. Many questions then arise. How to justify, in terms of American law, such a risky and morally questionable practice? How to explain that, in the name of research on mind control and manipulation, psychotropic substances were put into the glasses of citizens? How to continue funding and concealing these expenses by drawing from funds related to MK Ultra, even as the agency's interior begins to question the legitimacy of these secret enterprises. There is now internal pressure to close these quote-unquote safe houses that serve as test sites, and this pressure is mounting as Ehrman's conclusions leave no room for doubt. If the operation is publicly discovered, it could lead to a national, even international scandal, likely to shake public confidence in the U.S. government. In the wake of the report, the CIA then begins a gradual retreat. Officials in the Concern Division acknowledge that it has become too dangerous to continue experiments that involve illegal and immoral acts. Discussions are underway on the best way to dismantle the facilities without attracting the attention of neighborhood residents and without prompting the recruited prostitutes to talk too much. Budgets are gradually redirected, and some agents who actively participated in the program are unofficially invited to reduce their activities. Instructions are given not to rent new apartments, to cease any new recruitment, and to prepare for closure. The decision becomes clearer in 1963, and a tangible retreat is observed. The staff in place begin to understand that the days of Midnight Climax are numbered. In 1965, the San Francisco apartments are officially closed, and no sign explains the reason to the local population, nor do any official information circulate. The prostitutes, who had been used to attract customers, largely ignore the global scope of the experiment in which they participated, and only a few rumors circulate in the milieu that these places were perhaps bugged by a government service. In 1966, it's New York's turn to end the activities of the safe houses established there. The leases are discreetly terminated, and the rooms are emptied of their recording equipment. Testimonies from some former agents, collected much later, suggest that the closure of these places is done without great ceremony. A few microphones are torn from the walls, two-way mirrors are hastily removed, and boxes of personal effects are taken away for storage or destruction. The thread then cuts on a part of the operation, but the question of what becomes of the evidence immediately arises. However, it is in 1973 that a major event occurs which will seal the fate of a large portion of the documentation related to MK and, by extension, Midnight Climax. That year, Richard Helms, then director of the CIA, indeed orders the massive destruction of files related to these classified programs. The reasons for this decision are multiple. The political climate is increasingly tense, distrust of intelligence agencies continues to grow, and the risk of leaks seems to become a real nightmare for agency leaders. The orders fall, documents are destroyed, detailed reports are burned, all traces of compromising correspondence are eliminated. Everything that could incriminate leaders or lead to a major investigation is erased. The films that were made in these brothel apartments suffer the same fate, and with them potentially disappear irrefutable evidence of the extent of non-consensual experiments. The lists of victims, already partial, are lost in this great erasure. There is no longer any official trace allowing the precise determination of how many people were exposed to substances like LSD or other psychotropics as part of these tests. The few documents that remain do not allow the reconstruction of the entire protocols, nor to know how many men were targeted in these apartments they thought were private. The years pass, and some of the main instigators, starting with Sidney Gottlieb, remain in contact with the agency, but they struggle to find any archives that would prove how the drugs were administered, nor the frequency with which these sessions, disguised as romantic dates, were organized. Subsequent correspondences with Gottlieb, found in files partially released later, indicate that after a certain time, even the CIA no longer knows exactly how many human guinea pigs were thus manipulated. No one keeps a complete record, and it is realized that despite the intention not to leave traces, the most severe damage affects both the victims and the agency's own memory. Then, in the early 1970s, distrust of the government and its institutions grows further in the wake of the Watergate scandal. When the public discovers that illegal espionage practices have taken place at the highest level of the state, it begins to wonder how far the CIA can go and whether other abuses might still be hidden in the background. This is when Congress and the White House decide to launch investigative committees to shed light on various secret activities of the intelligence services. The Church Committee, created by the Senate and led by Senator Frank Church, embarks on the task of untangling the threads of several suspicious cases, including MK and its subprojects. The Rockefeller Commission, established by the White House, also commits itself to analyzing the behavior of intelligence agencies. Gradually, members of these committees hear witnesses, scrutinize the remaining documents, and attempt to gain the cooperation of still living officials or their heirs. Sidney Gottlieb is questioned about his methods, and even if George Hunter White, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics agent who managed the safe houses, is no longer there to explain himself, posthumous documents confirm that he regularly received funds from the CIA to cover rents, supply drugs, and pay prostitutes. In the halls of Congress, senators discover with shock that the CIA-funded brothel apartments where innocent men and minor offenders were unknowingly consuming LSD before being subjected to clandestine observations. The information disclosed shocks part of the public, and the American press, hungry for revelations since Watergate, seizes the scandal. Newspapers publish eye-catching headlines. They talk about CIA brothels or LSD sex house, and this vocabulary, which is as shocking as it is intriguing, captures the attention of the entire country. The victims of this program, most of whom did not suspect they had been drugged or filmed, feel cheated, betrayed by their own government. Articles detail how the CIA conducted experiments on ordinary citizens, violating their individual liberties and severely infringing on fundamental rights. Public discussions then focus on the very idea that a federal agency, theoretically responsible for protecting national security, could engage in blatant violations of consent. Some men are questioned, believing they were drugged in one of these bars or brothels. However, the absence of tangible evidence, the destruction of records, and the lack of concrete elements seriously complicate the possibility of any legal action. The few victims who come forward face a wall of administrative forgetfulness. No one holds documents proving the exact date of their visit, nor records of the dose of LSD they may have been administered. The agents involved mostly prefer to remain silent, and many have already left the CIA or the FBN or even passed away. Some vaguely remember participating in infiltration operations, but they claim to be unaware of the full extent of the experiments. Meta, pause, sex, 3.0. The investigative committees are confronted with the difficulty of proving the facts, especially when the majority of the archives have disappeared. Ultimately, there is no successful criminal prosecution leading to a conviction, and despite widespread outrage, the justice system does not manage to determine clear institutional responsibilities. As for the direct violation of constitutional rights, the Fourth Amendment, guaranteeing protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, sparks intense debates. Some legal experts argue that the forced administration of psychotropic substances without a warrant or consent constitutes a particularly severe form of privacy violation. Other researchers and medical law specialists point out that informed consent, a fundamental principle in any research involving human beings, has been systematically disregarded. They believe that the damage done to the dignity and health of individuals cannot be justified by the argument of national security or scientific research. But in the absence of formal evidence, reliable witnesses, and sufficiently precise procedures, victims can only express their outrage without obtaining concrete reparation. Many of them, moreover, don't even realize they've been involved. The few men who testify publicly say they've developed a lasting sense of anxiety or paranoia, sometimes without knowing that LSD could be the cause. The case gradually dissolves in the post-Watergate flow, as both Congress and the White House seek to correct the image of intelligence agencies with promises of reforms and compliance. Some senators recommend stricter supervision of covert operations, and directives are adopted to prevent any future experimentation on non-consenting subjects. However, the sequelae of Midnight Climax remain irreversible for those who unknowingly underwent the administration of powerful drugs. The majority of those responsible for these experiments are already retired or deceased, and prosecutors are having great difficulty building cases capable of leading to prosecutions. The moral question, therefore, remains: how could a country so attached to individual freedom and democracy have allowed such an operation to take place in the shadows? The answer may lie in the political and psychological context of the Cold War, where the fear of the enemy sometimes pushes institutions to cross legal and ethical lines. But for historians analyzing the legacy of this scandal, it is mainly the deliberate destruction of documents in 1973 that today prevents a full understanding of all that was committed. The CIA, having lost part of its own memory, is no longer able to produce any reliable statistics on the scale of the operation. What emerges clearly is that the operation, already unscientific in its methodology, ended up harming not only individuals' rights, but also the reputation and collective conscience of an agency supposed to defend American security. The international public opinion, when discovering these revelations, is both fascinated and stunned by the idea that a state organization could have set up booby-trapped brothels to study the effects of LSD, then later destroy almost all evidence of its actions. Although commissions recommend greater transparency, many observers believe that trust in the CIA remains damaged, and that the legal or ethical flaws highlighted by this case have never been fully rectified. This legacy continues to fuel discussions about the boundary between national protection and the preservation of individual freedoms, and it sometimes serves as a reminder that any government agency, even one entrusted with a security mission, must be accountable for its practices and adhere to the fundamental principles of democracy, or risk slipping into illegality and arbitrariness. Although various articles, journalistic investigations, and testimonies have attempted to shed light on the situation, the elapsed time, the lack of physical evidence, and the death of many protagonists prevent a full recognition of the harm inflicted on victims whose identities remain mostly unknown. The Midnight Climax case, thus revealed in fragments, closes on a sense of impunity and the bitter conclusion that an operation of this nature, conducted in the heart of the United States, will never have a true judicial epilogue, leaving only in history the memory of a drift where the end constantly claimed to justify the means, illustrating the ease with which a government, under the guise of an urgency related to psychological warfare, can violate its citizens' most basic rights.